This episode is brought to you by Google Chrome. You think you know a browser, but Gemini and Chrome? That's new. It can help you with practically anything on the web, like restoring a vintage motorcycle from a 50-page restoration blog, or finally break down that long article you've had open for weeks. Gemini and Chrome is here for it. Ready to make anything online make sense? There's no place like Chrome. Check responses, setup required, compatibility and availability varies, 18+.
I joined Millennium as an intern and now work as an analyst, learning from experts across the globe. Millennium is a global alternative investment firm at the intersection of technology and finance. As an intern, I took on projects with real impact. The experience challenged me, expanded my skill set, and taught me more than I ever expected. Learn more about internships at mlp.com/Spotify students.
Welcome to Learn Finance 101, where we break down the key historical events within finance and economics. This is the story of how a small Nordic nation, blessed with vast North Sea oil reserves, transformed temporary resource wells into the world's largest sovereign wealth fund, managing over $1.5 trillion as of February 2026. Unlike many oil-rich countries that fell victim to the resource curse, boom-bust cycles, corruption, inequality, and economic distortion, Norway built a fund designed to preserve wealth for future generations while adhering to some of the strictest ethical guidelines in finance. It excludes companies involved in tobacco, weapons, coal, and serious human rights violations. It engages actively with holdings on issues like climate change and corporate governance. And it has become a global leader in responsible investing, influencing pension funds, endowments, and asset managers worldwide. Yet this model is not without tension. In November 2025, Norway's parliament voted to suspend new ethical exclusions, sparking debate about balancing principles with returns in a complex world. As we stand in February 2026, with a review committee set to report later this year, Norway's approach remains a beacon and a battleground for the future of ethical finance. In this episode, we will walk step by step through the origins of Norway's oil discovery and the fund's creation in the 1990s, the evolution of its ethical guidelines from 2004 onward, the mechanics of how it invests ethically while pursuing strong returns, the key exclusions and engagement strategies that have shaped its portfolio, the controversies and challenges, including the 2025 suspension and interim rules, the fund's performance and global impact, comparisons to other sovereign wealth funds, and the enduring lessons for investors and policymakers in February 2026. As ethical investing faces new pressures from geopolitics, climate urgency, and market volatility. Let's begin by stepping back to the late 1960s, when Norway's quiet North Sea coastline became the site of one of the most transformative discoveries in modern economic history. Norway's story as an oil nation started on December 23, 1969, when Phillips Petroleum struck oil in the Ekofisk field in the Norwegian sector of the North Sea. It was the largest offshore oil field discovered at the time, and it marked the beginning of a resource bonanza that would propel a small nation of 4 million people into one of the wealthiest per capita in the world. Production began in 1971. And by the 1980s, Norway was exporting billions of barrels, generating enormous revenues that threatened to distort the domestic economy. The fear was the Dutch disease, named after the Netherlands' 1960s natural gas boom, where resource exports strengthened the currency, making non-oil industries uncompetitive and leading to deindustrialization. Norwegian policymakers, drawing lessons from other oil-rich nations like Saudi Arabia and Venezuela, decided early on to manage the windfall carefully, distorting Parliament established the Government Petroleum Fund in 1990, later renamed the Government Pension Fund Global in 2006, to save and invest oil revenues abroad, shielding the domestic budget from volatility and saving for future generations when the oil runs out. The fund receives all net oil and gas revenues, after costs and taxes, which are then invested globally in equities, bonds, real estate, and unlisted infrastructure. The fund's size is staggering. By February 2026, it manages approximately $1.5 to $2 trillion, roughly 3 times Norway's GDP. It owns about 1.5% of every publicly listed company in the world, making it the single largest equity investor on Earth. Norges Bank Investment Management, NBIM, a division of the central bank, handles day-to-day operations with a staff of around 500 in Oslo, London, New York, Singapore, and Shanghai. From the beginning, ethics were woven into the fund's fabric. Norway's Lutheran heritage, strong social democratic values, and commitment to human rights shaped its approach.
This episode is brought to you by Google Chrome. You think you know a browser, but Gemini and Chrome? That's new. It can help you with practically anything on the web, like restoring a vintage motorcycle from a 50-page restoration blog, or finally break down that long article you've had open for weeks. Gemini and Chrome is here for it. Ready to make anything online make sense? There's no place like Chrome. Check responses, setup required, compatibility and availability varies, 18+.
I joined Millennium as an intern, and today I'm an engineering analyst in Dublin. During my internship, I worked on an AI chatbot and learned quickly with support from accessible managers. It showed me how quickly you can grow when you're surrounded by the right people. Learn more at mlp.com/Spotify students.
The first ethical guidelines were introduced in 2004, following public outcry over investments in companies linked to landmines, child labor, and environmental damage. The guidelines aim to ensure investments aligned with fundamental ethical norms without sacrificing long-term returns. The ethical framework rested on 2 pillars: product-based exclusions and conduct-based exclusions. Product-based exclusions targeted companies involved in certain activities: production of tobacco or tobacco products, recreational cannabis, certain weapons, cluster munitions, anti-personnel landmines, nuclear weapons, and coal-related activities, thermal coal mining or coal-based power production exceeding specific thresholds, such as 30% of revenue from coal. Conduct-based exclusions focused on serious violations, gross human rights abuses, for example forced labor, child labor, severe environmental damage, gross corruption, or other particularly serious breaches of fundamental ethical norms, especially in conflict zones. Decisions were made by an independent council on ethics, appointed by the Ministry of Finance, which investigated and recommended exclusions or observations, monitoring without divestment. The final authority rested with Norges Bank's executive board, which could revoke decisions but rarely did. The fund published all exclusions, with rationales on its website. Transparency was key to maintaining public trust. Active ownership complemented exclusions. The fund engaged with companies through shareholder voting. It votes at over 10,000 annual meetings each year. Direct dialogue, thousands of meetings annually, and expectation documents on issues like climate change, human rights, water management, biodiversity, and corporate governance. For example, the fund pushed for better disclosure on carbon emissions and transition plans, divesting from laggards but working with leaders to improve. By the mid-2000s, the fund had excluded over 100 companies, including major names like Walmart, labor rights, Boeing, nuclear weapons, and Philip Morris, tobacco. Coal exclusions, introduced in 2015, led to divestments from over 80 companies by 2020. The fund's climate strategy evolved. In 2019, it committed to divesting from fossil fuel explorers. And by 2026, it has integrated net zero alignment into its portfolio, with a target of carbon neutrality by 2050. Performance remains strong despite ethics. The fund's annualized return since 1998 is around 6%, outperforming its benchmark by 24 basis points. Ethical exclusions have had minimal impact on returns. Studies show the fund's ethical tilt even added value by avoiding high-risk sectors. This success made Norway's model a global benchmark. Pension funds like CalPERS, endowments like Yale, and other SWFs, for example New Zealand Superannuation Fund, adopted similar approaches. But in November 2025, the model faced its biggest challenge. Distortion voted to suspend new ethical exclusions and observations, halting the Council on Ethics' ability to recommend divestments. This followed intense scrutiny over exclusions related to the Gaza conflict. For example, divestments from Israel-linked companies like Caterpillar for equipment used in demolitions. Domestic critics argue strict ethics forced divestment from major tech firms, for example social media for content moderation issues, threatening diversification and returns. International pressure mounted. US officials criticized the Caterpillar exclusion as politicized. The government appointed a committee chaired by former central bank governor Svein Gjedrem to review the framework, with a report due October 15, 2026. Interim guidelines were established. The Council monitors but cannot recommend exclusions. Norges Bank can revoke previous decisions. Enhanced due diligence applies to investments in conflict zones. Product-based criteria, tobacco, cannabis, coal, weapons, remain in place. Handled by NBIM for coal. In 2026, the fund's exclusion list stands at around 104 companies pre-suspension, but no new ones are added. The pause has sparked debate. Supporters see it as pragmatic. Critics fear erosion of Norway's ethical leadership. Norway's model is widely regarded as the gold standard, transparent, principled, return-focused, but the 2025 suspension highlights tensions in applying fixed rules in a complex world. In February 2026, as the review looms, the fund's future could redefine ethical investing. The Norway model isn't just a financial story, it's a blueprint for turning resource wealth into enduring, responsible prosperity. Thank you for listening to this episode.
I joined Millennium as an intern and now work as an analyst, learning from experts across the globe. Millennium is a global alternative investment firm at the intersection of technology and finance. As an intern, I took on projects with real impact. The experience challenged me, expanded my skill set, and taught me more than I ever expected. Learn more about internships at mlp.com/Spotify students.